Right now I want to go through one error that you might be experiencing and how to resolve it. This is going to be a good lesson for seeing how to debug problems that might crop up in your application. So at the moment I'm running my application on an Android device, and when your app opens up you might have the following take place, and we can simulate this with a hot restart. What will happen is when our app opens up, and assuming we're already logged in, we'll see the timeline page. What'll take place at this moment is we're going to see our spinner shown continuously, and it's not going to resolve to anything. So this in itself indicates that something's not happening correctly, and if we take a look at our debug console to see more information about it, we see that we're having some trouble, if we scroll all the way up, getting the value ID. So we see that the getter ID was called on null. So this is resulting in an unhandled exception. And if we scroll down just a bit, we see that this is taking place in line 1 of our stack trace. We see that this is taking place in timeline state. So what's happening is, if we look at the specific function, see the function that's being called is getFollowing on line 48, and it's not being called correctly because at the moment, if we flip over to our timeline page, which we know is being shown immediately when our app starts up and we're signed in, if we go to getFollowing, we're trying to get the ID value from current user, but it's resolving to null. So what's taking place is in home, when our user's authenticated and here within handle sign in, we're setting state to say isAuth is true. We display the auth screen if we scroll down to the bottom. With our ternary, if isAuth is true, we're displaying our auth screen. But what's taking place is the current user value that's up at the top of our file is being set afterwards, after we redirect. But this seems strange because create user in Firestore, which is where we're setting the current user value, runs before we're setting state. So what could be the problem here? So the issue that we're running into highlights an important concept behind working with async functions. So if we take a look at create user in Firestore, this is an async function. But because the return type is implicitly void, we're not setting a return type, we're not saying that this returns anything, and in fact it doesn't, it's just setting current user. We in many cases don't need to await this function when we execute it, because we know from working with await, async await functions, that we generally need to await something only when we want to resolve the future right there within the function. At least that's how we've been doing it. But here's another important part about async functions. In order to make sure that an async function runs before another operation, we need to await it on top of using await to resolve a future. So in order to fix this error, we just need to make handle sign in an async function so that we can then use the await keyword before create user in Firestore. And this is going to ensure that current user is always set first and is provided to our timeline page as a non-null value before we set isAuth to true and show the timeline page itself. So once we've applied those changes, once we're awaiting create user in Firestore, we can save and we can hot restart again. And once that restart takes place, as we could see, we were logged in silently. Our timeline page was shown, but this time instead of getting an infinite spinner, we got the posts in our timeline loaded successfully, and if we check out our debug console, there are no errors anymore.